Hello and welcome to WriterHouse. My name is Joanna Lee. I am one of the founders of River City Poets. I'm here with my co-editors of Lingering in the Margins, Judy Melchiorre and Marsha Owens. And we're going to do a reading from our anthology today and follow that up with hopefully some questions from you guys on our process in putting the book together and any questions you might have about submitting or editing that we might be able to answer or might not. This was an adventure for us putting this together, and we're really excited to be here at WriterHouse today. And before we start, Polly is our local liaison here at WriterHouse today officially. So would you like to tell us a little bit?
Thank you. First and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to all of you, especially the editor, you, Joanna, for your spirit and your presence in Richmond and the gift that you bring to Virginia and to our regional I can talk. I'm still in gear from last night when we had the 100,000 Poets for Change event here. To our creative, very diverse regional word community. It's a huge gift to us that you all are here today. And I'm also want to acknowledge Joan, who sometimes teaches, who has poems in the anthology and sometimes teaches. And Patsy Asuncion, who is a board member and just the heartbeat of this organization. When I moved to this area from Richmond in 2007, I was looking for community, and especially creative community. This organization had just been formed by 7 writers who had taken workshops together and met for 3 years in coffee shops and decided that they not only enjoyed feedback, they liked the community and they wanted to offer that experience to other writers. That's the heartbeat of the organization and why it was originally created. So WriterHouse is one of 3 501c3 public service organizations in the state of Virginia, and it offers workshops, seminars, programs like this. It has 8-week classes and a variety of different programs. WriterHouse, especially with Patsy on the board, has been blossoming into more co-creative projects and programs with other organizations in the area, like the James Madison Regional Library, the Right to Heal program. The workshop that Patsy presented recently was part of that. Was a 3 organization sponsored project. So WriterHouse is a board-run organization with a membership. There are a couple of events I'm going to quickly mention, and you know now how easy it is to get here from Richmond. So we have coming up in, can't remember the dates, I think it's October 18th, Chip Shields is, there's going to be a book launch. You can look it up on I'm tired. You can look up WriterHouse.org. The Shaman of Cliff Garston, thank you, is going to be giving a presentation on his new book. And Words in Wine, remember the date, Words in Wine is a really fun event that's a fundraiser for WriterHouse, held right across the street in the Silk Warehouse, and it's bringing together of wonderful food, all kinds of great raffles, and community. So if you look at the WriterHouse.org calendar online, you can find the dates for those. Thank you again for being here, and you're on.
Thank you, Polly. Yes, ma'am?
I don't know if it's because I'm on the back row, but I can use a little more sound. If that's possible.
Okay, I can talk a little louder, but maybe you need to move up to the front, Marsha.
But let me try. This will try to hold a
use
little.
the mic either. She was out front of the mic.
Okay, that is fine. Just don't want to miss a word.
Before we get them buzzing. Before I go with that. Is this, can everyone hear well now? Is this, no background, there's a little twang in there. How's this? Is this okay? Can everyone hear all right? So when you come up here, this thing's fully adjustable, and you can read from the side if you don't like the podium, or just yank it wherever you want it.
Thank you, Tom. Tom Brown is not only one of our contributors in the anthology, he's also recording both audio and video today for this event, as he did yesterday for the 100,000 Poets for Change event. So we really appreciate you as well for doing double duty here today at WriterHouse and yesterday. Again, my name is Joanna. My co-editors are now clearly in the back, Marsha and Judy. And we're not going to do a whole lot of introductions for this reading because all of you contributors, you have bios in the book. And this is our way of saying if you're not a contributor and you want to know more about these readers, you should buy the book. Right? So we're just going to introduce them, and they have up to 7 minutes each to read some of their work as well as what is in the anthology. So we're just going to dive right in, and please welcome our first reader to the mic, Maria Badillo.
Can everyone hear me? I'm a little soft, so if you can't, just give me a wave. Thank you. Haiku in the Beat, Elwood Thompson's Richmond, Virginia. The cafe bustles, early bird artists making caffeine-fueled magic. Laptops and coffees christen newly cleaned tables as sun seeks the sky. Passions fly without motion, furrowed brows keeping time between smiles. The cottage at the end of the lane. A west wind blows down cobbled stone, a road traveled by seekers. Perhaps you are one of them. Perhaps so am I. Were we journeying companions, we would cross together the gently flowing brook through the covered bridge gripped by flowering vines. The road is dirt on the other side. Weathered prayer flags float in the breeze to greet us, stretched between tree limbs. Below, a Buddha, enclosed in a simple shrine, invites us to take pause. We've heard mention of the wise one who dwells at road's end. They speak of her kindness, her knowingness. They say that answers live here. I wonder which one you seek. I wonder if you wonder the same of me. In silence, we traverse. Our path leads us out of the trees into a field of gardens and grain, patches of vegetables and herbs. I see oats, spinach, violets. I breathe in a fresher scent than any I have known. You and I round the lone willow tree to a front door painted green. Incense burns on the windowsill, loose, hints of sage and sweet lavender. Weary backs begin to soften. The door opens without prompting. She holds out 2 cups of tea. Welcome. She walks through wildflowers. She walks through wildflowers with open palms and moon-kissed aura. The woods breathe as she whistles a refrain to the birds who welcome her. And the flowers take in her exhales as she summons theirs with a succulent smile. sage. Steady hands crush dried rose petals, holding memories of the descent into self. Like Queen Inanna herself, she remembers the darkness, remembers the light, honors the expansion, the awakening. The mortar and pestle catch each flake of flower and hope, lavender for tranquility, mugwort for clarity, oil of sage for a wisdom no structure may contain, and love to sustain in each flower once held by journal pages dripping with secrets and verse. The incense burns beside her, a companion equally lit, aware, wondering how Pluto could be so dismissed, how pleasure could be disregarded, and how creativity could be so undervalued. In the waters of spirit and empathy, the tidal wave of truth beyond duality. We are parasites to the host of separateness. Wholeness lies not in attachment. And she cries, tears of wonder and awe and wishes, closes her eyes and wishes, sits in meditation and wishes like magic and prayer and manifestation, a wish for poetry in the soul of humanity, a wish for love, tranquility, clarity, and wisdom, and the resin to adhere it to us all. The rose. The rose rises from thorns, empty without those sharp, shameless daggers, held only by the careful and the worthy, who respect the balance between such pleasure, such pain. An apology to Mother Earth. An auburn finch chirps merrily, pecking at a soda can. A line of turtles enjoy the sunlight atop a log. A drinking straw floats by. Buttercups dance in a light wind. A paper cup tumbles past. An old woman scoops up the trash left by others. I'm sorry. Satnam. Peace and silver hairs glint at the edge of a simple white turban. Small crow's feet and sun-kissed freckles on coffee skin. Mantras at each fingertip. She begins each day here, atop Zafu and mat, room plain, adorned only with flower, flame, and guide. Pale curtains frame the east-facing window, wafting with the morning breeze. Hummingbirds buzz, darting shadows across the warm hardwood floor. A ladybug strolls slowly by. What wisdom do you carry for me today, she whispers, through weathered lips, turned up in a gentle grin, bowing low to the scarlet beetle. Namaste. Thank you.
Just to clarify, if any of you didn't notice me, I'm Judy Melchiorre. I'm the third of the Musketeers of the co-editors. Thank you. And the gentleman that I will be introducing is not a stranger to the Charlottesville area. I met him a couple of years ago. We were in a class together, and the poem that he wrote, I believe it won a prize, and I think he owes me a drink from that still. Yes. Anyway, I have the honor and pleasure to introduce Les Bard.
That drink is coming, Judy. So it is something of a homecoming for me. Not so long ago, I retired from teaching 12 years at Monticello, the last 12 years, and before that, other schools in Albemarle County. So it's a great experience to be here. I thank WriterHouse for having us. This first poem is from Lingering in the Margins, a book that's being pushed back there. And you can hold your applause till I finish. That's all right. You don't have to applause between poems. Little Sorrel. Stonewall Jackson's war horse, Little Sorrel, is on display at VMI in Lexington, Virginia. We are not allowed to fondle the flanks of Little Sorrel, embalmed and mounted. She looks tired, her horse hide worn, encased in glass, untouchable, relegated to the basement of the Virginia Military Institute, safe from the Southern belles who clipped her tail hairs to braid into wristlets and rings, safe from the pawing hands of cadets who once petted her for good luck. Her expression seemed to ask why her master got off so easily. Nearby, Stonewall's bullet-holed raincoat hangs hollow. He too could have been stuffed. His hide could have served just as well to carry the lost cause. Poor Little Sorrel, captured, recaptured, captured again, then returned to the losers' circuit of veteran reunions, shouldering the false fog of memory, left with nothing, an empty carcass, still a slave to her vacant master. And the next poem is also going to appear in an anthology, but this one will be entitled Show Us Your Papers. It's from Main Street Rag in Charlottesville, North Carolina. Census. In a dream, I am young, sporting long dreadlocks, pushing a baby stroller, and I am cuckooing for the baby. In the morning mail, I find a census form and an application for an AARP card, a reminder of my real age. I am balding and not as handsome as I was in my dream. I fill out the census, stating I am an Algonquin Kickapoo. I like the word Kickapoo. It means one who goes here, then there. It seems like a good idea. As I remember the day-long curfew that counted the citizens of Bolivia. My passport was snubbed. I was recorded Bolivian. And so I might as well be, on a borrowed wind-up toy spinning in circles, straining to interpret whose hands cradle my face in the funhouse mirror. And this next one will be appearing in the Tishman Review. Terminal. Is anybody here? I was in a group here in Charlottesville, and they helped develop this poem. Terminal. The paper-thin winter skin of crushed garlic clings to your fingers. Your paralysis, the mash of cloves, pummeled by a knife blade, the pungent scent of the inevitable. You look out there, somewhere over the waves, over the curvature of the horizon. A ship plows the ocean. You know it is coming, although you cannot see it. I rehearse for your coming funeral, struggle with eulogy. Too many words, too few. After the weeping, what are we left with? The weight of your ashes blowing in the wind over Pea Island Refuge. Ashes that whirl and cling to our crackled skin then float with grace on the North Pond, where they wait for snow geese to come and carry you away. And this last poem is a newer poem. It is called Crimes Committed in My Sleep. I dream we are in a tavern and every kind of gun imaginable hangs from the ceiling. Rifles, pistols, machine guns, more menacing than the blizzard outside breaking the back of Lake Superior. In the haze of the beard-stubbled bar, you turn to me and tell me you are pregnant, and that in the future, which somehow really is the past, you will lose the baby and spend time recovering in the hospital where I am destined to work as an orderly. For some reason, the hanging guns all turn and point accusingly at me. I am dressed in hospital whites, surrounded by hunters in camouflage. They seem certain I am the father. I order a brandy and coke, a crime in itself, and I am beginning to feel guilty, even though this is all happening while I sleep. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I am sorry you lost your son. Or is it our son? I am sorry we are in this bar surrounded by guns. I am sorry I ordered a brandy and coke. I toss and turn like an indicted politician. A cathartic snore rouses me from sleep. It was only a dream. Yet I can't help but feel a little sad, and I wonder if the boy would have looked like me. Thank you.
What did you eat then?
Yes. Well, that's an interesting story, isn't it? I'm sure it's all fictional. My next introduction is a young man that I met I remember speaking to him at Barnes & Noble when we had a signing, and I said to him, I said, I really like your poems. The images are so kind of quirky and edgy and disparate. How do you do that? And he's like, well, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm really glad that you like them. So with not further ado, Jason Bates.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to read from my phone, so. If you have a copy of the book, first poem of mine is on page 56. It's called Bravery in Situations Such as This Is Not My Strong Suit. All right. The Chorus of Horus sings its hymns in dissonance, each one moaning off key. I've swept the church clean with God's own broom. I've shooed them towards the door, but they scatter and hide in dark corners, underneath the pews. And now I cannot pray with their eyes on me. They snigger when I drop to a knee. I can hear what they are offering. I light candles to hold them back. But candles are too easily blown, and the dark so easily enjoyed. Second one is on page 106. I have mastered holding things. I carry footfalls stolen from breezes and impressions lifted off trampled grasses. I hold them like hearts, like babies, like trinkets hidden to keep safe the magic. I carry them alongside sunken ships and rain-soaked eulogies. I hold them wrapped in pages ripped from dictionaries stolen from ghost town libraries. I hold them all like they are my own, like they are not crushing me. Every morning I pass the same tree. It stands alone, separated from a thick grove of brethren just ahead, and every morning I think I should write a poem about it. This is that poem. He trudges behind the column of other young men marching south to war, reluctant and tired, rifle slung over his shoulder like school books he failed to read. This is not that poem. The sun is setting beyond the platoon. They are jubilant in victory and adrenaline spikes, the hero leading them home. He is heavy with lost friends and the extra weight of their letters in his pockets. I think Judy will like this one because it's pretty quirky. There is no such thing as black ice. There is no doubt that I lost traction and slid uncontrollably off the side of the road, and I'm now teetering on a cliff's edge. And the snow is swirling around like it hates me too. And the radio is playing That's Not My Name, like it knows where I've been. Thank you. Tell me about the rabbits. Paint for me a landscape made up of your words, where your breath is the spring breeze warming up from the south, and your voice echoes in the tiniest movements of the creatures you create. Tell me stories of soft love, consummated on hard ground. Just tell me stories of soft love. Just tell me stories. I'm going to try to get through this one without messing it up. The priest rides low in the hollow of my heart. You're a clever son of a bitch, I'll give you that. The way you've saddled yourself on the backs of skeletons and ridden in from the sunset is nothing short of faith healer status. Your head lost inside your hood, your robes whipping in the dusty wake as you approach. There's a gleaming crucifix, still wet with the intimate soul of the last virgin, wound about your wrist and swinging like a hypnotist's watch. I know you do not come for me, but to possess me, so that I may take another. Deep down in where the human lives. She points at my chest, traces small circles in the air, believing that the butterfly effect will work on souls with faulty hearts. Her lips start rumors against my earlobe and her fingers massage locks, believing that I contain a monster instead of vice versa. All right, last one. The moon doesn't give a fuck about you. That fingernail hanging from a spider web attached to the stars, you see how it glows silver and blue? That's not for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I see why Judy is a fan. The next person who will read for us today is not only a poet, but a short story writer and a novel writer. So please welcome J. Tom Brown.
I wasn't trying to get out the back door. So I'd like to thank the editors for putting together Lingering in the Margins and making it happen, and to WriterHouse too, for Polly and Patsy and all who keep everything going here. And so when I got my acceptance, it really made my day and the next couple of days as well. So my endorphins were going. So I have 2 poems in the anthology, Conversation with a Coat and In a Dark Dream. And there are several things I like about writing poetry. There's a brevity to it, so you can say something in a page or less that might take 20 pages of short story prose. And there's also the way it easily lends itself to satirical elements. So a lot of what I write has satire and socially conscious bent in the poems. And there's also the prosody of words. So the beat and rhythm of music, I think, is related to like the beat and rhythm in poetry, and it's like coming from the same part of the brain. But at the same time, with poetry, you can try to reach people with the intellect, and the emotions. So just to get to it, the first poem is "Conversation with a Coat." And so when I write poetry, sometimes I'm thinking of music too as well. So this might have a Parisian street kind of sound to it, like an Edith Piaf song playing in the background. Names are the invisible shadows with which others clothe us, and we them, the sheaths of the souls within. They are entries in the phone book, or like a coat hanging on a chair. They are the outer layer. Memories are movies, woven from dreams, clips of scenes carefully rearranged. Conversation was the thread between us. They couldn't hold on, the stitching unraveled and the elbows worn. Lift the handset, please, from the cradle when I call, and put your coat on the line. We can talk some kitsch to pass the time. The next poem is In a Dark Dream, and so this, you might imagine Peace in the Valley playing in the background. So that was originally a Thomas Dorsey gospel song, but Elvis Presley made it very popular, and I think it was 1958 on the Ed Sullivan Show. And it was a tribute to the Hungarian refugees in the Hungarian Revolution. And so Elvis features in the poem. Sleep, Elvis, dream of summer days gone by, in the heated beat of promise, the anticipation of something new, dancing on endless highways through the dashboard radio. Dream, Elvis, in the land of summer now, on the road of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, in the heat of hair-dryer winds, kicking blind in a simoom, the sheath of a grim giant. Shake it over the Tigris, rock in the Abu Ghraib, rattle and wail to tears and mourning in a pink Cadillac she had, blast them into the space-age baby oily pelvis. Rock and roll forever, in shifting desert sands, awash with the blood of ancients from your guitar hands, you are dancing in a dark dream. Where is the idol we once knew? Where has your song gone to? Take the road home to the land of promise. Give us back our dreams. We'll be waiting for you here. Thank you. So, last poem is a socially conscious poem I wrote a long time ago, and it's called Honeymoon in Harrisburg. So it came about through an alliance between Reagan and Regan, and which was an alliance between Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, and our government. And so the government defunded socially responsible programs such as federal funding to state mental institutions. And Byberry was a huge old mental institution outside of Philadelphia, and they shut it down during a cold snap, and homeless people just descended on Philadelphia. So a lot of them didn't have their meds, and were freezing. So this is Honeymoon in Harrisburg, and it's from a collection I just put out of 33 audio poems with the text as well. Leather-soled shoes do the get-ahead shuffle. Camel hair coats glide over the walk. Tight-fitting gloves grip black leather handles. Hat brims lower down to the cracks. Sally Two Skirts is walking through town. She's wearing two skirts. one to her knees and one to her thighs. She's got a crazy set of radish eyes and ragdoll hair tangled by the wind. She's howling, yelling in the air. I want some answers. I want answers now. If nobody can tell me, we'll go to Harrisburg. They have answers there. 2 blocks down, a gas station on the corner. There's a trash can at the curb where Toothless Bob has lunch. Bob lifts the lid, finds a couple Lucky Fries, shoves them between his hairy lips, then wipes his lizard hands on a tattered coat. The attendant steps outside and yells so loud you hear him on the other side of town. You're a man, you're a man, you're a man. The sky falls down. Bob pretends he doesn't hear, keeps on munching. Sally walks by. I want some answers. I want them now. Let's go to Harrisburg. They have answers there. Bob puts back the lid. When spring comes, they're nowhere to be found. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'll just say something very quickly about this editing process. Every poem that, kind of made the finals, if you will, was my favorite. And Tom's was definitely my favorite because of Elvis. I'm a 60s girl, so I thought, yes, this is great. So thank you for that, Tom. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our next reader, who is living in Richmond now. I know some of you came from other places, but Debbie is someone who came from Richmond, and I'm a native Richmonder, so that makes her A-OK, right? Okay, please welcome Debbie Collins.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh. My first poem is a love poem of sorts for my husband. He was in the hospital recently, and this is what came out of it. It's called Helpless. The angels with their white souls keep interrupting our fragile peace, while the monitors bathe your face in eerie red. The doctors speak in tongues I cannot understand, while I hum your favorite song. It's full of rivers, music, breath, the beginning to all our stories. And this is one my husband thinks is about him. It's called He Says. I am fierce. He says I'm fierce. With my hair on fire and slash of a grin destroying all his good intentions. His hands write a song on my body. The lyrics thrum like jazz alive in a smoky room. I devastate his jutting hip bones and sharp shins as he falls apart above me. I wake to find his face, a regrettable blur against the pillow. I make a pot of coffee and drink it all myself. He thinks I'm terribly beautiful. He says I'm fierce. My next 2 poems are about living with a mental illness, which is very close to me. So the first one is called Mania. My face is afire, lit from within by a brilliant madness. I want to harness this kinetic energy for something useful, like burning down buildings or felling trees. I'm alone in my head, ready to release and relinquish this terrible secret upon an unsuspecting world. The Attempt. The chalky protein shakes, pink or chocolate, taste like failure to me. I'll slough them off on the other crazies. The nurses threaten to take my smokes away if I don't eat, but I like the process of whittling down, bearing bone. You brought me some, not the brand I usually smoked, but I was touched nonetheless. We sat on my bed to talk on the rough white sheets, institutional and reeking of bleach. They were an affront to me, so clean. They found me with sand in my hair, sand in my mouth, on a beach in Laguna. I promised you I would eat. My next few poems are about neighbors, good and bad, mostly bad. The first one is from the Anthology. It's called Tiny Murders. My street sparkles with broken glass, which I contemplate as the old guy next door screams at his wife, his cursing and railing reaching me on my front porch steps. I can hear the hoods down the block on their balconies throwing crumpled beer cans at the passers-by below. They hoot when they hit one, so happy with themselves. Meanwhile, last Tuesday, kids on bikes shot an innocent man as he left the laundromat down the street. I heard the clothes flew from the basket he held to his chest. T-shirts and white socks littering the sidewalk with the candy wrappers and old dog shit. Just another tiny murder. This poem is about a neighbor right next door who kind of lost his mind and decided to display it for the whole neighborhood to see. He moved to California, so we're very happy. It's called The Waltzing Fool. The neighbor has parked in my space again, and I am unreasonably pissed, but I'm too afraid to say anything. His wife said he's been off his meds for weeks, and then she moved out last Thursday. He strews furniture and pots and pans across the lawn and into the street. There's a sofa cushion, an ironing board, a ladle, a potted plant. I just don't know what to say that won't sound like a cloud of lies. I'll leave him to his manic waltz as he falls apart piece by tiny piece, surrounded by forks and knives and dirty sheets. This is my last one. It's called It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Won't You Be Mine? I'm the wife who smokes and drinks too much and peppers my conversations with cuss words loud enough for the kids to hear. I'm the wife who wears the obnoxious fringed pants to the neighborhood cookout and studiously ignores the sun-dressed mothers with their ever-increasing herds, kids galloping and shrieking all the damn time. I'm the wife who still wears the college jeans with the holes in the knees, as the other wives order jogging tights, all the while eating mouthful after mouthful of Julie's fabulous French onion dip. I'm the wife who hates the cocktail parties and the cookouts and the Christmas parties, who hates the SUVs and the manicured yards and the strollers. I could kick your kids at any second, steal your husband with a look. I'm the bad wife of the neighborhood. I am chaos waiting to happen.
Still love that last line. Our next poet contributor to read, we're exceptionally happy that she can join us today. We've been trying to get you to come out to be a part of a reading since we started this, so we're really happy to welcome Joan Massa to the mic.
So I just want to say I do teach here at WriterHouse, but very rarely. And I'll be teaching The Secrets of Writing every day on October 12th, which is a Saturday, 2 weeks away, from 1 to 4. And I've been writing a poem every day for nearly 8 years. So I'll tell you how I do it. I'm going to read 3 poems. The first one is from Lingering in the Margins, and the other 2 were published elsewhere. And the first one I wrote right after Anthony Scaramucci was kicked off the administration. Caffoons. They've made it to the White House, threaten like thugs anyone who could be a leaker, call verbatim reports fake news. They take their foul mouths to microphones, then blast reporters for transcribing their words accurately, quoting sentences with 4 different 4-letter words ending in CK. I think of my Sicilian ancestors who tried so hard to rise above their peasant roots to ensure all their descendants would own a house, become educated, and wouldn't have to sweat to make a living laying bricks or digging in the dirt. The street kids who skipped school were punks, goons, and bozos. Without manners, eloquence, or respect for elders, they were caffoons.
worse than hoodlums and gangsters, lowest of the lowlifes, more contemptible than common mafiosi wannabes, without their put-on flair. Now these bullies dare speak for our country in words that can't be repeated on the air. Unpacked box. I look in my desk and jewelry box for safety pins. Remember them in the middle drawer of the sewing cabinet left behind in the last house. No sewing room in this one. A cardboard box, jumbled contents of those drawers. Spools of silk thread, pastel ribbons for a project never started, packets of needles folded in black paper from Mother's millinery days. I wish she could see me here, I say aloud, habit of long solitude. Mother is dead 20 years. A roll of lace, hand-tatted, but by whom? I didn't make that, Mother says, snatches it from my hands. Someone spent hours of her life on this. I leap backward, ready to run. Mother says, "Can't you make me a little coffee? Oh, put some lipstick on. You look like you're dead." This last one is Darwin and Davinci. Somewhere in the multiverse, somewhere past a black hole, I turn right at a silver asteroid and coast into the strings of a cosmic suburbia to find a house that looks like mine. I serve dinner to Charles and Leonardo, who laugh when they see each other, looking-glass faces and beards, mirror minds bubbling with curiosity. This space-time pocket of dreams and inventions is a reverse Tower of Babel. We speak our native languages in idiom and references of our time, fully understand without translation. I make pasta primavera because even in this small corner of the vast cosmos, Leonardo is a vegetarian, and Charles still skittish about his digestion. I set up a slideshow of fossils on mountains and let them take it from there. When we move to the living room for tea, they discover bound editions of their notebooks and drawings on the coffee table amid tomes of their art and science. Both left-handed, they delight in mutual quirks and interests, surprised to meet 5 centuries after Leonardo's death. I tell them a bit about the Mars rover, Voyager, Watson, and Crick, but mostly I'm quiet to listen to them talk about their drawings. Oh yes, I tell them, people fly in planes and helicopters. The evidence of evolution makes it fact. In the bathroom, the 2 men take turns flushing to watch the tank empty and fill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. We're so glad that you could finally join us and share your poems. The next young gentleman that I'll be introducing is kind of a newish addition to River City Poets. But he's been steady, he's been coming, and we are glad that he is here today and that he contributed to our anthology. I'd like to introduce Govind Narayan.
I
love that I'm newish and youngish. So it's good company. Yeah. All right, I'm Govind Narayan, and I'm a writer of little things, and like you, looking at the world one more time. And what I'd like us to do is to look at three things twice. So for the mathematicians in the room, 2 times 3 is 6 little things. The sixth will be the poem that is in Lingering with the Margins. The first is called Not Mine. The swaddling makes its way around the room, compressing space, tightening my chest. I fear this child. Sounds of the room sharpen, laughter shrill, conversations roar, gentle gurgle cuts through. With the head not fully fastened, my blunt arms don't know how, maybe in a couple of weeks. 18 years later and a land away, unable to make eye contact with my cowardice, I cannot touch this child that should have been mine. Wait for it. Feel its heft. No muscle. Its pull into your hand, pulls at a shoulder's tendon, roll it in your finger, find its balance without sight, pinch it, a quarter turn and stabilize. The blade tugs at the top of the wrist and the hilt compresses the bottom. Touch. Gentle now. Skin should not yield. Don't saw. Wait for the pop. The blade rushes through. Follow it in with curiosity and vigor. Let's look twice at our times. Contact. An arrow through the heart was a surprise. Consequences, sequences, Miss Math used to say. Not the way I planned, they took my Bible. There'd be no saving today. But yes, roasted escargot, salt in the wind, and gritting shadows of stick figures, and sanguine, splattered crystal sands, all uncontacted again. Event horizon of the Bulgarian. Frozen first by the hustle, ridicule oozes for man and hat. None will be bamboozled except we are. Frozen by lies, satisfied with spell checks and yesterday's fact check, knowing neither ever spoilt a story, or JFK's I am a jelly donut speech. Fact check that. Frozen next by shame, he is not an original, only a collage of the TV screaming parts of us, hating what we feel, we hate instead. Frozen in exhausted objection, each a diminishing fight, playing the other guy's game, snipping paper puppets from our principles. Frozen finally by the cruelty, realizing too late it has always been the through line, waiting for any end, blistering in the warmth of the sewer we thaw. And let's look twice at kind of a moment of rebirth. In room 217, shave me every 2 days. Alarm at 6, sounds of birds, everyone else must knock. Tune to The Price is Right at 11, NCIS on Tuesdays, Fareed on Sundays, an hour of murder mystery on tape after lunch. Keep my subscription to The Economist and The Post, leave my pen and journal at the ready, celebrate my birthday elsewhere, by the lake. Be nice to the nurse and to each other, and do not resuscitate. And this is the little thing that's in Lingering with the Margins, and thank you for including it, all three of you, wherever you are. Yeah, three. No peace without acceptance. Dying at 33, outlived by unexpected things, Mother, Doris Day, Mayflowers. The next test, one room over, will not be mine. The next incision will be on Carnus. Lesson for some med student. Learn well, Doc. I love you, my 9-year-old. I love you, my teary widow-to-be. Darlings, rest with me, or don't. Warm glow from surgical light, slow wave of the saline stand, one sustained, cheerful chirp, hello. Thank you.
You have no idea how long we went back and forth about that last word. Hello. Hi. Hello. Hi. No, I mean, there were meetings just about that word. Editorially.
Which is a question you should probably ask the editors when they open it up for questions.
So thank you, Govind. Our next contributor poet today is battling a cold, I believe, but she's going to fight through and share a couple poems with y'all. So please welcome Mary Riley.
Hello, everyone. Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I will try to read, but my apologies already for if my voice wavers because, I'm coming off of a cold, and there were a couple of days at the end of last week where I just didn't even have a voice, so it's coming back, but it's not completely there. So I'll read my poem, which was included in the anthology, and I'm also going to select 2 other poems from the anthology of other poets to read as well. And one thing I really love about this anthology is that I'm relatively new to Richmond. We've only been there for about 2.5 years, and yet this book, this in essence to me is like a reference. This gives me more people across this region who all are poets. So in one book, I get to know many, many more people than even the people that I met in Richmond. And Richmond itself is an amazing place, supportive place for writing and the arts, and I suspect that Charlottesville is the same. And I've learned a lot about Richmond even before we moved there and was excited. And I've been reading about Charlottesville before coming up here today and was excited. So, this just all is really great. So, I suppose I should. Okay. I had a big old thing, but I've already gone through it. So, got to get another one. Thank you. Okay, so I'll read my poem, which is titled To Helenka, Who Was a Poet. This poem was written dedicated to Helen. Her nickname is Helenka Dagan Cohen. She was one of the founding editors of a journal called Rhino, which is up in northern Illinois. And she would have these, would run these workshops when we lived up in the Chicago area. So I got to meet her, and she was just really an amazing woman. When she passed away, she was in her early 80s. And I thought to myself, I only wish I could be that active and continue going, at that age. So this is for her. Your real world was always the sky. When the Gestapo came, your mother fashioned your escape. Carry the empty cup and keep walking. Another woman brought you under a masked canopy of hiding. You vanished into the undulating skies and wildflowers of the Russian-Polish countryside, far from trains and terror. After the war, miraculous to say that, your family reunited, came to the United States, and began again. Missing cornflowers and wheat fields, you recounted your lost world. Rivulets of shtetl, celluloid exile, writing as though you reviewed your childhood from overhead. So many wildflowers you tended here. Like your mother, you fashioned our escapes. You showed us how, when it is the only thing, to wear the mask, carry the cup, and keep going. Alongside highways, I see a scrim of periwinkle chicory, a floating haze. I can barely make out traces of your footsteps in the summer air. But of course, you were always able to fly under your own power. There's several poems in here which I just really love, but I'm only going to read a couple of them. So it's not to say that I don't like all the others or anything like that. But one that I one that I really enjoy. It's by Maria Tucciarone. I'm not sure if I've ever pronunciation correct. It's on page 107. Title is "The Supple Grass Was Once Green, Fresh, and Sweet." The supple grass was once green, fresh, and sweet. I inhaled air by cupsful deep and long. With wrens and sparrows my ears gave to song, my heart swelled bursting with a rhythmic beat. Once I stood steadily on solid firm feet, tendons connected sinews, limbs sewn strong. My head easily sifted right from wrong, foundation laid level, thick and concrete. Now the brittle grass smells umber and burnt, shallow breaths cry, faltering steps, no sound. The rights I knew were something that they weren't. Deafened vultures seek shade, mute birds abound. The cold carcass I pick, suck on the bone, to feed my sunken eyes, my heart of stone. And the last one I'll read is Doc's Hymn by Christina Cox. This is on page 111. C. I am gray-green, a reflection of the worshipful water beneath me. The shore sags low, a popsicle licked away by greedy, thirsty tongues. Bare feet beat down the hill. Before we meet, they are briefly airborne. Like me, the feet have grown rough and weathered. They take pieces of me with them, embedded deep in their skin, infected with salt, seagull splatter, sun-soaked memories of a monumental sermon. When they come back, I will say, pick up these frayed ropes, prick your thighs on my splinters, gut your fish on my planks, watch their scales bleach in the sun. They will lose their glimmer as blood fades into my boards. Witness our collective communion. We will grow gray together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for that lovely going through and sort of picking some of your favorites. That was great. It's like, man, we should have asked everybody to do that. Next time, taking notes in the back. So thank you. Our last contributor poet to share with us tonight is Richard Rose.
How should I spend my 7 minutes? Hold the claps. Won't be hard to do. I could spend the time by saying, buy my books. Buy one today. I could do that.
Marketing.
Where's the band?
I could hand out flyers for my blog, Speculative Fiction, Music, and Poetry. Actually, I have them. That's okay, though. Poets are so full of themselves, aren't they, that they must be cleared from the stage in 7 minutes. In fact, poets, like so many leaves, are all of them crackling with desire to be consumed, but in a cupped ear, in perfect silence. Giants, gods, and corporations have always been full of themselves. Maybe I should read my poem about Thor being deceived in the land of the giants. Now Thor, the mighty of the Aesir, treads in the imprint of the giant's heel. Now Donau Thor of thunder lightning is silent, with his hand grip tightening on the shortened haft of Mjolnir. His restless fingers press his belt of steel. His fiery eyes are downcast darkened as he follows apace a scrimmer, frost giant, son of Rime, from Utgard silently along the hill, and westward, brushing through dark-hid pines, they whined. They said, "Come, toddler Thor, drink deeper." In thought, he overturns the line. No, I don't think the editors of Lingering on the Margins would ever take that poem. How about the one about another man full of himself, the self-made man, who's never finished being on the make, no matter how he sees himself. The self-made self is not the made, but making. Here's a riddle. What's red and light and true, if not the self that frames itself in making? Read the world in 8 by 8. Construe its rules for castling and mates and taking. The self-made self is not the made, but making. Or read the world as light, dissolving lines to scattered and composite images. The self-made self is not the made, but making. But if you read the world as piles for taking, settled truths and self-made for the ages, though self-made self is not the made, but making, release your grip. Erase your heavy lines. And read yourself as notes. The birds sing waking. The self-made self is not the made, but making. Well, the editors did put that one on page 102, but you know what? I'm still full of myself. Aren't you? Haven't you heard that we're all full now? We're full. No others need apply. We've limited the sky. The songs are sung, the stories told, the faithful sheep are in the fold. All measures indicate that we can calibrate our hate. We're full. We've eaten up the past, the so-called millions gassed, the board of scans for feeble minds, middle passage, trail that winds in tears both west and north, are left behind as we go forth. Yes, going forward from this day, none hesitates to say, we're full. And need no longer wait or question how we legislate, for whom, how much, or why. For you see, we've limited the sky, detained invention, walled up hope, banned intellect and scope. So do not question how or why we're full. Believe. Comply. Thank you.
That's great.
Let's give a round of applause for Richard and for all our poets here today. just such an amazing array of voices. And I think that's what was really spectacular for us about putting this collection together, was just the array, the breadth, the scope and perspective that we encountered in all of our submissions. So I think what we're going to do, we've got a little bit of time, is give you guys a chance to stretch and drink. Yeah, drink, eat. Or saying, the questions will probably come freer in the second part, the more you drink. Right? Whatever. So we'll meet back in about 5 minutes or so, and then we will do a Q&A and talk a little bit about the book. But yeah, we started out on just a much, with a humbler goal or humbler mission to support the writers in our immediate community in Richmond, in our critique group per se, our workshops, who were asking how and struggling to get their first pieces published. And someone, I believe it was Marsha's idea, who said, well, we could create a venue to publish them. And I was like, no, that's way too much work.
No, that's not what she said. She said, okay, do that.
Then we started talking about it seriously. We went and got some advice from others in our community who had gone through an anthology process and sort of picked their brains and said, well, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can just figure it out piece by piece. We set up an email address and a website, and we didn't have any of these things to start with. And we did a submissions call that got picked up by Duotrope, so it was worldwide. Wow. And we did have submissions come from not just Virginia. We had some from New York and Texas and all over the U.S. And we ended up, the submission whole process was quite humbling. And also quite surprising, because it was not only the poets that we had, hoped to support locally and immediately in our community, but also former Virginia Poets Laureate, people who had books, people who we really admired, and were like, how do we possibly begin to put this into something? Or we were thinking, maybe we'll have a little chapbook and we'll take it to Kinko's and we'll staple it and it'll be a great little thing. And then we're like, well, no, maybe we need to step up our game a little and start looking for a publisher and talk about doing this, a real deal. We got to work with a graphic designer for the cover. And so it sort of snowballed step by step and became, the book that you have now we're really, really happy with. It's a beautiful book. Chop Suey Books in Richmond did publish it, and they worked with us very closely in the last 6 months or so to make sure everything was right. We had a fabulous, fabulous designer who we found through the Visual Arts Center of Richmond, which does classes there, much like there are classes here at WriterHouse. And he was a graphic design teacher. And he's like, I've never done a poetry book. And we're like, would you like to try it for very little money? And he's like, sure. So we were very, very fortunate, both in our publisher and our designer, to put together something as beautiful and professional as what we ended up with. So that's my take on it. I'm going to let these ladies, if you have anything to add.
Well, the only thing not the only thing, I could say a lot, but
Yes, Marsha, go ahead.
First thing I want to say is my gratitude to having the opportunity to work with Judy and Joanna. Going into this initially, we were friends, but and then for a while you sort of cease to be friends, and then you realize, oh, I really love these women, and I really do, and I'm very grateful for having had the opportunity to work with both of them. I felt like each of us brought something to the project, not necessarily the same thing, so that was good, And as Joanna said, it sort of was like chewing on gum that you can't get out of your mouth. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you know. And I just remember a couple of times I did, I'm not sure they did, but I just said, oh my God, what is going on here, you know. But it was all good. It was all good. It was just not, it was a journey that evolved. And that's my style. I like that. If I have to make a plan, like going on a trip, I don't do well with that. I want to go where the road carries me, you know. And that's sort of how this was. And each person's contribution, I want those of you who are here to know this, as well as if you talk to other contributors, I think we've tried to say this. Each person's contribution was unique and special on its own merits. And the hardest part for me, because I had never done this before, other than grading papers in English class, but it's not quite the same thing. The hardest part for me was getting down to the decision making. You know, it was really, really hard because Judy might say, well, I really like this because, and I said, well, I really like it too, but, and then Joanna would say, I don't like it. That's not quite fair. But it sort of sometimes happened like that. You know what I'm saying? So I felt camaraderie with each poet's piece of work because I know how hard it is to write poetry from yourself, you know, from who you are, and you put it out there, and you hope that somebody will appreciate it, of course. So if I had had my way, this would be an anthology that's this thick, but it's just not the way it works in real life. So I also want to say to all of you contributors out there that you should be very proud and know that we did not take this lightly at all. We were very, very focused on the quality of the work and what we wanted this anthology to be. So I thank you, too, for trusting us with your work.
And just to give you some idea of numbers, we started with around 200 poems, which, well, I'll just speak for myself. I was amazed that we had 200 poems to start with. And so we started reading, and we read and read and read, and started making piles of what I really like this, and this not so much, I don't know. And somehow we came to consensus on the poems that you all contributed to the anthology, and it was a process of learning how to make those choices. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to make those choices, about the actual editing process, about putting together an anthology, how you have to place the poems on the page the way that the author wants them to look, with the margins that we have. It was some of them were quite challenging, and there was a lot of detail work that I was not aware of, and I do thank Chris Hibben, the design person, because without him, it wouldn't look as good as it looks, and that cover would not be there. So anyway, I feel that it was just a incredible experience for me. And see, the way I came into this is that Joanna and Marsha were meeting. I I was over at Joanna's house, and we were talking, and Marsha comes in and says, "Oh, well, we were going to discuss this anthology thing," and then all of a sudden they're saying, "Well, wouldn't you like to be part of this?" And I am like totally part of what? Okay, so that's how I got roped in, and over 2 years later, yay! But I'm glad that they included me. I am so proud of the work that we did together, so proud that we can display your poems so beautifully. And thank all of you for your contributions. It means a lot to us.
That's all true. We did sort of rope her in, and she didn't really ask for it. But she stuck with us, so thank you for that. And I want to add to everything that they've said about the whole process, and reading and rereading in piles and disagreeing on what we liked and what we didn't like. The one thing that the biggest takeaway message for me as far as submitting my own work and looking at it from the other side is that there needs to be one person. Like, you don't know who's reading your work. You don't know how many people are there on a committee or tiers of editors or what the whole process is. You may not know. But one person has to be touched in that line or that group or that committee. One person has to be like set on fire by what you do and be willing to fight for your piece among all the other pieces, among their colleagues, and say, look, I don't care what you guys think, this piece is brilliant. And if there's enough persistence and they believe in it enough, if you've touched that person, if your work has that fire for that one person, that's sometimes all it takes to land at a publication, is that connection. So think about making your work magic, something magical about it, something on fire when you're putting pieces out into the world. That would be my one piece of advice that I've learned from submitting. So now we turn it over to you guys. If you have any questions, yes, Tom.
Yeah, I just like to mention, like Judy was talking about the cover, and so I took a couple books to the Fredericksburg Book Festival and got a lot of compliments.
Oh, really? Oh.
Sold some.
Yay.
But to sell any poetry is like, And
Yes.
so one guy said he had designed book covers in the past, and he said it was really hard to get the typography, the fonts and all, and that it was a very good job.
Oh, good. Yay.
Thanks.
That's good to hear. Good feedback. We'll pass it on to Christopher. He's
Yeah.
kind of a
He teaches part-time at Viz Arts, and this, I think, was one of his, was it his first book? First poetry book, of course. So, and then he kind of fades into the background, So I really want to take some of these comments to him because we felt very, very grateful to him for doing what he did, because we had no clue about that. Richard?
The poems are gathered into sections. Were the sections determined as you worked through the poems?
No, the sections were not determined until after we had the entire body of work. And I'm glad you did mention those, because I think that's one of the things I'm proudest about with this collection is how we decided to divide the sections. Because for me, it goes back to wanting to support our immediate community. And we did have one submission that we really, really wanted to include the poet. We knew him. We knew he'd been really working hard to get published for a while. But his poems tend to run more prosaically, and the piece as a whole, we didn't feel it was going to be a good mesh. But we found some of the language, some of the phrases and lines were very beautiful and very striking. And so we went back and forth. This is after we decided on everything we'd accepted and everything we'd rejected. And we're trying to decide, so how do we connect it all? And I'm not sure how we boiled down to it. We said, well, let's take pieces from this poem. Let's take the lines and pull out what speaks to us. And then let's see if we can organize the poems from the collection loosely. And we had piles all over the place. I can't tell you, like, we cut out phrases, we had slips of paper, we had this, it was a huge mess. And everybody had a different opinion about what the phrase meant and what the line meant and what poem should fall underneath it. But we were able to make some sense of it ultimately. But it was based on the lines from this one poem.
And I'm familiar with that poet and the Richmond basis of the poem gave this anthology a unique look. It's really unique from that point. To have the anthology itself organized by a super poem over all of the others.
Yeah, and the poem was written by Tyler Turpin. He's mentioned on
the
page in the introduction.
Yeah,
in the introduction, yeah. Because that was just such an important piece for us in terms of being able to organize the sections and figure out what would go where. There were just some phrases that were, as Joanna would say, magical, and we used those.
And we wanted to do something to distinguish it from most anthologies. That we did some homework. We're looking at how do people usually organize anthologies, and they do it by season or by number or something very, very linear and expected. And we're like, well, we don't want to do that. So this worked for us. Other questions?
Anything else?
Jason.
Are there any pieces that any of you championed that didn't get in that you still hold, like that you still really not necessarily wish was in there, but that just didn't make it through?
Yes, is the short answer. But when you're working as a team, and I value that, feel like if this were something I were doing by myself, I'd tear my hair out, Rosalind. I don't know how people do this. But working as a team, I felt like we all had strengths to bring to the table, different strengths to bring to the table. So it was a great lesson in, what's the word? Compromise. Yeah, I guess that is a compromise. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have too many glasses of wine occasionally, and I was going, no, I want this. And one or both of them would say, no, we're not doing this. So there was some of that type of thing for sure. But it's the nature of poetry, right? It speaks differently to different people. And I think that was one of the lessons I learned about as a writer myself, is to keep in mind that when you write something, let me change that. When I write something, it's coming from my heart and soul, and I think, this is so good. I just really think this should be published. And then I get these rejections, and I think, okay, well, not everybody reads it the same way I do. And this is one of the lessons I learned from being on this side of it, is knowing that it can be a wonderful piece, and just because it's rejected by this group doesn't mean it will be by another. So I'd like you writers to keep that in mind if you're trying to get published too. You just got to have the grit and get out there and do it. And if it's rejected, you just go, oh, whatever, write again. Right, Joan?
Right. What else?
How long did the whole process take from start to finish?
2 years.
2 years. 2 Christmases.
2 Christmases. every once in a while, Marsha would say, "How are we getting close to finishing this?"
Because I'm the oldest one in the group.
Right, Marsha was afraid she might,
Before I made my money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before she got the big check. So we had to reassure her we will finish before that time.
Yeah.
Although we're still waiting on the big check.
Yeah, we are. That's okay.
Yes.
That's okay. And
in terms of time, too, I mean, this woman works all the time, 24/7. Judy works part-time. I am retired, but I still, have a life. So all of this was kind of down the list a little bit. So we kind of got into a routine of meeting about once a week. And I also want to give a shout out, if you're ever in Richmond, for Patrick Henry Pub, because that became our office. So if you're in Richmond sometime, please go by and get a hamburger or something and say, I'm supporting Lingering in the Margins, because they let us use their room free. And we were able to spread out our papers and books and order from the bar, and sometimes we overstayed our welcome, but that was great. That was great that we had that. And it was a central location for the three of us because we live in different places around town. So that was a real gift that they gave to us. So I'm very appreciative for that.
Yeah. So what's your next book?
next question.
We haven't ruled out that we won't do it again. How about that? We haven't ruled it out.
Anthology 2.
Mary. Could you talk a little bit about the process of approaching publishers? Usually how did that happen? What were the conversations like? And when did you know you had a match? That kind of thing.
Sure. Because that's one of the hardest pieces. I think that was one of the hardest pieces of the job, and the most intimidating.
And we gave it to Joanna.
Yeah. And I think it's both as an individual author and as an editor of a larger body of work, it behooves you, it behooved us to get to know local publishers. And we're very fortunate in Richmond to have a handful of good publishers who were willing to work with poets. And so we opened up those conversations relatively early on in the process. We were still taking submissions. We didn't know how long it was going to be. We didn't really know the scope of the project, but we were already starting those conversations and saying, hey, we're doing this thing. What do you have to say about that? I mean, could you help us out? What would it cost? What would be our relationship?
Did you call them? Did you take them out for a drink? And do this?
No, well, we didn't have a whole lot of money for wining and dining. But no, I dropped by. So, for example, the publisher that we ended up going with, Chop Suey Books, is also a local bookstore, right? So you'd pop into the local bookstore every now and again. You'd say, hey, what's going on? When they did readings, you'd show up. And I was fortunate to have a relationship already through connections with the James River writers that have been ongoing. So it wasn't a new thing. It's like, okay, well, I know you've published this and this, and I've kept up with it, and I've showed up. And so now we're doing this thing, and you know what we've built. Can we start a discussion? And so it's really I can't encourage this enough. It's just to build those relationships early. If you think you might be publishing, consider local and consider developing those relationships and just showing up, just supporting other local authors, supporting local bookstores, supporting local independent publishers, just by going to their events and doing, Belle Isle that Richard, you work with. They're also in town. They're doing a book festival in October. We'll be there.
I put some information on I put in here on the way out.
Okay, good.
Cool. Sweet. So yeah, it it wasn't something where we went out and we wooed an agent. I think that's more of a fiction world sort of thing. It doesn't work that way in poetry so much. Poetry publishers are a little different unicorn. And we did talk to not just one. So that was another thing too. It's like we were afraid to put all our eggs in one basket. And Chop Suey for me was my top pick because I knew that they did a great job promoting poets and promoting their book, and they had the name and the panache sort of to make some sort of waves in Richmond, which we did. We got some great press when the book came out. But we were also talking to other local publishers, Circling Rivers and Jean Hewitt's, and we were very fortunate because she was already on our radar. She was coming to our open mics and been talking to us, and so I said, hey, can we sit down, and we'd had coffee. So not drinks and dinner, but coffee. I could do that. And say, well, this is what we want to do, and what do you think? And so we did have options, and I think that was important too, that we felt like, well, we're not just, we're going to be wrecked if this falls through, sort of thing. So that was important. Does that help?
And I remember the moment we were at, I think it was,
I remember this moment. We were at a lit crawl event, and Ward, the publisher for Chop, so he was there. Joanna and I were there, and we had already spoken to Ward about the possibility of publishing us. And we were, really, really, really hoping he was gonna say yes. And all of a sudden, it's like there was something went off in his brain, and it just clicked, and he said, oh, wow, we need to get working on the anthology. And I looked at Joanna, and Joanna looked at me, and we're like, yes, yes. Yeah, it was like, oh, we have a yes, we're going to go forward. It was so exciting. Unexpected, but, we were hoping for it, and then it came through.
I'm a big believer, too, in, to just piggyback on what Joanna was saying, on personal connections whenever you can do that. I learned, I have to give a shout out for Joanna here, through River City Poets. She had more connections than either Judy or I had in Richmond. So we sort of dropped back and punted to Joanna. Joanna, don't you know Ward at Chop Suey? And that kind of thing. So it is really important, I think, to have made some connections and not just go in blind and say, oh, I have this book. Don't you want to publish it? It's probably not going to happen that way. So, that's a really important thing. And while I'm doing shout outs, Maria, raise your hand. She read earlier. She was on the cover of Style magazine in Richmond when the book came out. So for those of you who are not Richmonders, she was a star. She was a star on the cover. Woo! Haiku and the beat, right?
Cool. Anything else? Are you ready to go, or do you have any more questions? We don't want to hold you. Well, I could talk all day about this because it's so exciting.
Just maybe one question. Do they have anthology contests? So, just like like best novel of the year and all the other things.
I don't know. Do you think we should apply?
Pardon me?
I don't know about that, but I will say the Virginia Literary Awards. So it would be hard to win as a poetry collection because it is an anthology and that's sort of a different animal. But there is a People's Choice category, and once voting becomes available for the next year's literary awards in Virginia, that the Library of Virginia does every year, we would love to be nominated, and we figure we have enough contributors if everyone just
So you need a nominator.
right. So and I don't think as contributors you can nominate, but you have lots of friends and family, right? So we figured we might be a shoo-in for that. If we could just get everybody, the numbers. So.
Thanks.
Anything else? Sure, I'm ready.
Reprint. Like, usually with the publication, they print so many, and then as it sells or doesn't sell, they make a decision to reprint more. Have you discussed that with them? I don't know how that works in poetry.
Well, this is a little bit different because our publisher chose to go through a print-on-demand service. So it is technically never out of print. We just order more. So I'm not sure how big the press run overall is at now. I know he's ordered several different batches of books to stock his store, and as you know, other stores locally have a demand. So I'm not sure honestly what our press run is at right now, but reprinting is not really valid in this context because it is sort of, you can always go back to the file and do it again.
One other quick question. So you three did the major selection, editing, and then you work with the publisher, and again, my experience in another world of publishing is that there's a person there who can create lots of havoc, can also contribute, but has a lot to say about further editing. Did you have someone from the company who wanted to come in and make additional edits and changes that you had to deal with them?
No, we made sure we got somebody who liked it.
So our publisher, Chop Suey Books, he's Ward Tuft, who's the owner there. He's pretty much the guy, and he did read through it and went through. He noticed a couple things, and he made a couple suggestions, like this word was wrong, or this sounds awkward. And this was mostly in the bios of all things. He didn't really. He wasn't critiquing the work. I don't know if he felt that was his domain or not. But I mean, he did look through very, very carefully, but not as an editor per se. So interestingly, our designer also put on his editing glasses, and he also picked up. So it's like having another round of proofs after we were done with it. That it's like, oh, did you mean for this this extra comma here? Did you? I mean, as a designer, as a graphic designer.
And so did Rosalind Elliott read it for us, and we're very grateful to her for the time that she contributed. She met with us and read all the poems as a poet herself and as an editor herself, and that was a wonderful gift. So thank you, Rosalind.
It wasn't that much.
Well, it was. It was.
For us, it was.
Yeah.
So thank you, guys. And thank you again, WriterHouse, for having us, Polly and Patsy and
All right, I think we're ready to adjourn, but there is a lot of food at that back table. If anybody wants a goodie bag, help yourself. If you have people at home who might be hungry and want some stuff, because or what, Polly? Just leave it?
No. Okay. I wanted to nourish what you were saying and invite you to take advantage of the time you still have remaining. As the author Peter Block wrote in his book, Community is the Structure of Belonging. Okay. And that ties right in with how you all co-created this incredible anthology, the community that contributed to making this possible. So big applause and drummers to all of you.
Thank you, Polly. Have some food and wine before you leave.